Welcome to Mennonites in 3 acts, looking at their Germanness and their language, and why the German language and Germany was so appealing to them, and why they identified as being Germans, and how they took that identity across the world to various other places. Throughout this journey, we look at how that language has changed and how the Mennonites have continued to keep up their lifestyle in different places, and some of the challenges that they had with that lifestyle. So our journey begins in Europe, in Germany, and the Netherlands, and in Prussia, looking at how these Mennonites who were spread out in these different places, all identified as Germans, and as Germans, and why they identified as Germans as opposed to the Netherlands. And the Netherlands was becoming a very progressive country, and so at the time they wanted to make sure that they were not seen as becoming more worldly, and they wanted to make sure that they were continued to be seen as pacifistic in their ways and in their lifestyle. And so that's why Germany appealed to them, and the nationalism that was going on in Germany at the time became very appealing, and they decided to become Germans. And then in our second act, we look at Manitoba, as Mennonites come to Manitoba, and many are still living in Manitoba to this day. They are seen very widely and visibly. And so here on this picture, you can see the west and east reserves here on either side of the Red River, running right down the middle here. And so you can kind of see where they settled. And we look at how their language in the schools that they made, that they were not allowed to teach German language, and how that was threatened, and how their lifestyle and their faith was threatened as well. And so ultimately they had to wrestle with these feelings, and they had to decide, what do they do? And so then we see that many Mennonites decided to move to South America, and that's where our third act takes us. We look at South America, we look at Bolivia and Paraguay right here, right around the center of South America, and we look at the Mennonites that are still there today, and how their language has changed because of their interactions both with English and with Spanish, but how they've also been able to continue to maintain that language, and how very much they still identify as Germans. And so throughout this journey, we look at the Mennonites as a German people. We look at how that German nationality was so important to who they are, and as well as their faith. And so in essence, it becomes a matter of what they believe in and who they are, and a faith matter, and religion becomes very integrally and tied to them as Mennonites. And so this whole journey of their Germanness and their language starts to take place in this discussion as to why they are Germans, and as to how they've maintained that language, and things that we can also learn. And so along the way, I provide some of my my personal reflections on some of these things as well, and how I connect with Mennonites, as well as some of these places that we look at across the world in these 3 acts. And so there's also my personal story in there as well, tied into the Mennonites, and how I have personally experienced some of the things that they have as well, and how I can connect with some of their experiences. And so hopefully along the way, it becomes a very educational one for you. I hope that you learn a lot, just as much as I did putting all of this together. And so have fun on the journey, and here we go.